All right, Paul, can I get a thumbs up? You can see the screen and hear me. Awesome, cool. And we're recording? Great. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. Thanks, everybody. Sorry for a little bit of a late start, a couple minutes into it, but we have a lot of content to get through. So this is the RFP information session for a funding opportunity through the Department of Employment and Economic Development for the Small Business Assistance Partnership Grant Program. So we're going to go through information related to the RFP, what's in it, what you're going to be required to submit. And then once we get through the RFP content, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Anna Rodell, who's going to provide a demo on our new grants management system and how you're actually going to be able to submit a proposal. For those who have submitted proposals through this program before, we did a good old PDF and emails and attachments and all that kind of process before, but we are now entering the 2020s finally, 3 years late, and we're going to be submitting through a grants management system on an online platform. So Anna's going to help us walk through what that's going to look like. But let's get right into it. So the agenda, we're going to talk about the timeline, goals and objectives of the grant program, details of the RFP, proposal format and submission, evaluation of proposal and awards, receiving and managing a state grant, and monitoring and reporting. And then at the end, we'll go through that grants management system demo. Once we get through the RFP content, we'll pause for 15 to 20 minutes for questions before we launch into that demo. This session is being recorded. And so we'll post the recording where the RFP is posted, so you can review that with your staff. You can send it around if you need to, review the content, and the slide deck will also be made available. So timeline, RFP is out. A request for proposal has been published as of Monday, July 17th. Today, July 20th, our information session. Please get us all your questions by August 11th. We set a deadline for those questions so that we can make sure everybody has an opportunity to read the responses to those questions. And then the proposals are due August 31st via the grants management platform. We anticipate award notifications going out September. That's ambitious, maybe end of September, early October, hopefully turning around executed contracts by October with a performance period that starts October 23 and ends approximately October 2025. So what's this program about? This program is to support the startup growth and success of Minnesota's entrepreneurs and small business owners through the delivery of high quality, free or low cost professional business development and technical assistance services. We've had some questions come in from businesses themselves. This is not a program directly for businesses to apply to. This is a program for organizations that provide business development and technical assistance services to apply for funding to then turn around and help those businesses that need that business planning support and technical assistance. So if you are a for-profit business yourself, this really isn't a funding opportunity for you. It's a funding opportunity for nonprofit organizations to apply for funding to then provide services out to communities and entrepreneurs. Proposals are actively encouraged from organizations that serve and or represent underserved populations and geographies, including individuals who are Black, Indigenous, people of color, veterans, people with disabilities, low-income individuals, and rural Minnesotans. Within that, we have identified 3 kind of priority themes that we're asking respondents to focus on and reflect in their proposals. Those 3 themes are as follows: equity, innovation, and vibrancy. What we want to see is that your proposal is addressing one or more of those themes, with really we're trying to emphasize people kind of focusing on one primary theme and then maybe supplementing their proposal with those other topic areas, but really strong proposals are going to identify one of those themes. And if you're not muted, please mute so we can reduce background noise. Sounds like somebody's driving on the freeway with the window open right now. So.
Brandon, you're on mute.
There we go. Okay. that background noise coming from? Okay, great. Moving on. So once again, just to quickly recap, in your proposal, you identify one or more of these priorities in your proposal. So available funding, how much money is available? When it can be used for? So grant awards are approximately for October 31st, 2023 through October 31st, 2025. That's the 2-year, 24-month performance period that we're aiming for. Obviously, the contracting timelines, that's a little bit of a back and forth. We may not hit those specific dates, but roughly plan around that timeline, a 24-month performance period. The maximum award is $800,000 for that performance period. That'll be 50-50 between those two years. So first 12 months, second 12 months. So $400,000 per year for 2 years, $800,000 maximum that you can request. A total of almost 11.5 million is available for grants. We estimate between 28 and 34 awards, average of $175,000 per year for an award. We anticipate anywhere between 70 and 90 proposals, of which, of course, roughly 28 to 34 will be funded. So this is a very competitive program. And we'll talk about what the criteria and scoring and all that is like, but I just wanted to kind of level set with those numbers. There is no minimum matching requirement. However, the most competitive proposals will at least propose 50% match, and that will impact your evaluation score. What do we mean by 50%? If you're submitting a proposal for $100,000, requesting $100,000 per year, we want to see match at least of $50,000 against that 100,000. And we'll talk about what we count as match and what match means later down the line. Once again, the proposal budget request will be for year 1 and year 2. You'll have a 2-year budget, 1 year, year 1, year 2. And to the extent possible, we will avoid partial awards. For those who have participated in this program in this past, no doubt, if you've been a recipient, you've gotten a partial award, and we're really trying to avoid partial awards because it's kind of a pain. If you put this great proposal together and then the state comes and go, yeah, we really like your proposal, but we're only going to fund you 70% of what you requested. And then you have to like readjust your work plan and all that. And we really want to respect your proposal as a whole as you submitted it and its merits and fund it at the full request. However, we reserve the right to award partial awards. Why do we do partial awards? It's usually because we have a lot of really great proposals and we don't have enough funding to fund everybody at the full amount, and we want to get more folks in, and that means haircuts so that we can fund more proposals. We have a great increase in funding this time around, so we're hoping that we can fund everybody at 100%. But we once again reserve that right for partial awards to meet strategic objectives, whether that's geographic equity, community equity, and other goals to make sure we can serve all of Minnesotans. That being said, the other thing I want to note here is it's really incumbent on respondents to this RFP to right-size their proposal based on the capacity of their organization and their plan. Going for the maximum, really, that means you have a higher hill to climb in terms of demonstrating the capacity to deliver on those objectives. Really looking at right sizing. Once again, that average, this is based on past grant rounds, is around $175,000 a year. Obviously, there's smaller organizations, larger organizations, differing capacities. There's a broad range within that, but really, you need to demonstrate your capacity to take on these funds and deliver. So really focus on right sizing that proposal at the amount that's going to work well for you. So eligibility, just a quick note, I kind of already covered this, but nonprofit organizations or public entities, including higher education institutions, engage in business development or economic development, community development financial institutions, or community development corporations. This is not for lobbying groups. This is not for chambers of commerce. This is for 501c3 organizations that are providing or public entities that are providing direct services to individuals and communities. And once again, we actively encourage organizations that serve or represent underserved populations and geographies. Black, Indigenous, people of color, veterans, people with disabilities, low-income individuals, and that also includes people from rural Minnesota. Allowable expenses. What can you actually spend this money on if you do get a grant? This is really about delivering direct services and delivering on the grant objectives in your work plan, which can include personnel, fringe benefits, travel, equipment, supplies, and contractual. We'll talk about the contractual piece and partnerships and things later down the line, but oftentimes, people submit proposals and they need to outsource some of their services. They need to work with partners to maybe do some translation or community-specific outreach. That's totally allowable. We'll talk about what that looks like later in the presentation. Expenses not directly related to delivering grant objectives, but necessary to support this program can include administrative costs. We are obligated to reduce administrative costs. So to meet that obligation, no more than 10% of total grant funds that you're awarded can be dedicated to those administrative costs. And we define what that means in the RFP. Look in there for more details. We're not going to get too far in the weeds here. Ineligible expenses, both direct and administrative, are include but not limited to things like fundraising, parking tickets, and out-of-state travel expenses. You can read that list. So if there's any questions, we can address those later. Collaboration and matching. So can you partner with other organizations to put a great project together? Absolutely, we encourage it. That's great. You will have an opportunity to submit that information in your proposal in a partnership chart and describe that in your narrative. There needs to be a lead fiscal agent who's responsible for the administration of the grant. That will be the organization that is under contract and obligated to deliver on those objectives. But you can do that in partnership with other organizations. We are not looking for organizations to outsource all their work, to apply and then just outsource all their work and just be the kind of the fiscal agent. We're looking for organizations that will also be providing direct services. So you better be doing something directly with those end clients, but we do encourage you to partner on other aspects of your project. Let's say you want to outsource very technically specific, prototyping services or things like that. And you want to partner with somebody. Absolutely. We encourage that. Kind of complicated thing to note here, though, is that you cannot collude with other responders to the RFP. So you may ask yourself, well, how do I talk to potential partners if I can't collude, if supposedly I can't collude? Well, what we mean by collude is you cannot share the content of your proposal with other respondents to the RFP. You may not know who else is responding to the RFP. So an email, a phone call, that's not collusion, right? But you can't send your proposal over to somebody and say, hey, what do you think of this? They better be a partner named in your proposal to be able to share the content of that proposal. This is to protect the competitive nature of this. That's not to say you can't have conversations with your community partners about what folks are doing and who's going to partner with who. But yeah, once again, no collusion on this. The budget should identify sources of any project matching dollars. You may have private funders, you may have local funders, you may have federal funders. You may be receiving funding from other state sources. Thing to note is that other state money from other sources is not considered match. And matching funds that are already targeting other programs cannot be considered match. You can obviously enhance your program with these funds, but for example, if you're receiving federal funds to do a thing and that federal fund requires matching, you can't then count that federal funding as match towards us. It's got to be, you can only count that matching dollar once towards one other source. Proposals must also, once again, identify sources of state money involved in the total project cost. One thing to note here, and just anticipating a question that will come up, is let's say your organization is a recipient of a direct appropriation, a legislatively mandated grant. Can you apply for these funds? Absolutely. Do those funds count as matching? Absolutely not. They do not. And we do take into consideration when we get these requests, okay, this organization is requesting these dollars to do this project. They have also received dollars from a direct appropriation legislatively mandated grant over here. How does that all work together? And do they really need the funding? Is those fund would that funding be better used elsewhere to an organization that didn't get a direct appropriation? We do take that into consideration. That's not to discourage legislatively mandated grantees from applying if they have a great project that is over and above what they're already getting state funding to do. So not excluded and definitely not discouraged, but you have to make the case that you need this funding, and that funding will go above and beyond what you're already doing. So let's talk about the proposal itself. What are you going to be asked to actually submit to us so that we can make evaluative judgments on whether or not you get funded? So we want to obviously know who your organization is, what your experience and capacity is in doing this work. Program design, service delivery, and work plan. What that gets at is what are you going to do, how are you going to do it, and what's your plan to get it done. Community engagement and inclusivity. It is very important to us that you are engaged in community and working with community to deliver these services that are valued by your constituencies and your communities. And how are you including them in that process? Partnership and collaboration. Who are you working with to get this done? And are they the best partner to work with? And what qualifications do they bring to the table? And how is a partnership actually a value add? And then performance reporting and evaluation. How are you going to track what you're doing? How are you going to collect that information? How are you going to know that anybody's better off having received these services from you? And then budget matching. What is being paid for? How much of it is being paid for? And what are those matching sources? And then there's a variety of required attachments. I won't go into great detail on those, but we need those to verify, eligibility, financial stability, some other things like that. So how are we actually going to make decisions? We will have a panel of subject matter experts, both internal to DEED, potentially other agencies involved, but then also we're aiming to have at least 25% of our reviewers, community reviewers, people outside the agency with subject matter expertise and experience and representation from various communities to help us think through how we award these funds. It's very important to us to make sure that we are co-creating and sharing the power of these impactful decisions with people affected by our decisions. And so that's why we involve community reviewers. So yeah, that's that. And then once again, 100-point scale, points awarded as follows. And now we're going to dive into the details of each of these sections. So what do we mean by organizational capacity and relevant experience? Who are you? What do you do? How long have you been doing it? And what capacities do you have to deliver on your proposed project? We are not the funder of first resort, so to speak. These are public funds. We tend to be pretty risk averse on this. We want to see that there's been some validation of your organization by whether private funders, community partners, some experience, some capacity. And we're here to come in and say, okay, how do we scale that up? How do we continue that work? How do we deepen that work? And so that's kind of what this is about. That's not to say that newer organizations can't apply, but you have to demonstrate that you have those capabilities and experience and at least some track record of delivering. And we also want to see that if you're serving a particular community, what are your cultural, linguistically relevant skills and services for that proposed client base? And then is the proposed project consistent with the size and capacity of your organization? If you submit your 990 and your 990 is showing, your operating revenue is $200,000 and you're requesting an $800,000 grant, it's going to raise some questions, right? How are they going to be able to scale up that quickly over this relatively short time to deliver on that project. So we are looking at that. And so make sure that your proposed project is consistent with the size and capacity of your organization. That's not to discourage your organization from reaching and growing, but once again, it's got to be, you know, consistent where you're at in your growth pattern. So program design, service delivery, and work plan. This just tell us, what are you going to do? How are you going to do it? What's your theory of change? What's the intervention you're bringing to these businesses that's going to benefit them? And how will it be provided? Who will do it? And what's the timeline by which it will get done? What are those key activities? So that is that. And community engagement and inclusivity, we want to know what's your outreach plan? How are you going to be reaching people? What community engagement have you already done in the run-up of submitting a proposal? Have you done some engagement to validate that your model will work and is needed and wanted by your communities and your service areas? And then what is your plan going forward to make sure people are engaged, that you can find the people that need these services? We really don't like hearing when we get out in community, really don't like hearing when people say, oh, I didn't know that, you know, we had these opportunities available. We didn't know that there was this organization right down the block providing services to our community. We hate hearing that. And we want to know that people got strong plans to make sure that people are aware of these opportunities, have access, and can get the help that they need. Partnerships, collaboration, and community support. Oftentimes, you know, these are community-led efforts with multiple partners. Who are they? What are they bringing to the table? Why these partners and not others? And also, what's the level of community support? How deep are your connections within the communities you're seeking to serve? And demonstrating that through key supporters and endorsements. So we want to see that as well. And then performance evaluation and reporting. This is very key. We are going to be doubling down on this. And one thing that we'll be asking folks to think about is very much like, what are they bringing to the table in terms of their capacity to know who their customers are, document what their customers are getting from this and what the outcomes of those services are. The strongest proposals are going to be ones that come forward and say, we are going to have the technology, the processes, and the people to do this well and consistently. There is a lot, these dollars are very high profile and under a lot of scrutiny, and these are public dollars, and the public deserves to know what they're getting for it. And so the strongest proposals are going to have a great plan with this. And we're really looking for people, looking for organizations that are investing in their, whether you call it a case management system or client relation software. How are they going to manage this? How are they going to be able to report back, hey, we served this amount of clients within this time period, and here are some outcomes, preliminary outcomes. Here are the final outcomes on an annual basis. We're really looking for that, and the RFP goes into greater details there. So if there's questions, we can address those. And budget matching. So this is about, what's the state paying for, and how much is it going to cost? What's it going towards? Once again, match is not required, but to have the most competitive proposal, we want to see some match. And we also want to see that funding request is consistent with the scale and capacity of your organization to meet program objectives. I think we've kind of covered that quite thoroughly. There's a number of required documents. There's a conflict of interest disclosure, affidavit of non-conclusion, and financial review documents, and a pre-award financial review worksheet. Quick note, if you are a public entity, we do not need to do a financial review or a pre-award financial review worksheet. So if you're higher education and public entity, state, like public education institution, you don't need to do this, city, county, things like that. But if you are a nonprofit, non-governmental organization, you will need to complete this. And these documents based on the scale of your organization, which I would expect most people are going to be between the $50,000 and over $750,000 in annual revenue. What is this about? Does this determine whether or not you get an award? No. The financial review is more about, it's a pre-award financial review, such that if you get through, just based on the merit of your proposal, if you get through and are recommended for an award, then we do a financial review to determine what conditions maybe need to be placed on your grant if there are any concerns about any issues in your financial review. Pretty rare that we have any issues or that are special conditions. Our grants operate on a reimbursement basis, so usually it's pretty tight financial controls as is. So usually there's not too much concerns, but we are required to do this. So please, obviously, to have a complete proposal, you will need to submit this. Submitting the proposal. So this is totally new to me, totally new to all you, though you may have submitted proposals through online portals in other agencies or other funding sources. You will be submitting proposals through DEED's new grants management system. We're really excited about this. We think it's going to be a great benefit to our applicants. And Anna's going to go through a demo of all the great features that it has. Please allow enough time to get registered in the system, add appropriate staff, all that. If you have questions about the system itself, this is very important. If you have questions about the technical system itself, please use that gms.deed email address. My team, under the mnsbp.deed email address, really don't know a whole lot yet. We're still getting trained in on the grants management system. We're not going to be able to help you. So if you have technical questions about the process, the grants management system, please direct your questions to that email address. As it relates to the content of the RFP, by all means, please email us and we will get your answers posted on the FAQ. So award determinations after the fact. So our panel will review these proposals and we will make our recommendations to the Commissioner of DEED. Commissioner of DEED reserves the right to change the amount awarded to any selected project. Our recommendation is just the starting point, not the end. But usually the recommendation mirrors very closely what the final decision will be. But oftentimes other considerations come into play in terms of making sure strategic objectives, agency-wide and administrative objectives are met through our funding that our review panel may not have visibility into. And so we reserve the right there. We're hoping to make award decisions by the end of September. That's ambitious, maybe more like beginning of October, but we're going to drive towards that date as hard as we can because we want to get this money out the door and these great projects off the ground and running. One thing to note is projects cannot start until contracts are executed. We hope you're going to get a great news that your proposal is funded. That doesn't mean you start. Please don't. We're not going to be able to reimburse you for those expenses. You have to wait till there's a contract, and that contracting process takes time. We try to get it done within 3 to 4 weeks, but sometimes that stretches out to six weeks. It depends on your response and other factors. So yeah, just keynote. Please do not start your incurring expenses until those contracts are executed. So receiving an award, you'll receive an official award letter with a final award amount. If that final award amount is different from what you requested, you'll need to submit an updated work plan and budget. We do not make line item vetoes in your proposal. Usually if it's a partial award, it's because we're trying to fund more projects. You will have a lot of discretion to adjust your work plan accordingly. Obviously, we do not expect you to do the same volume of work at a reduced amount, but we do expect you to do the same work, just maybe at a reduced volume. You will receive, review, and assign the grant contract, send that to DEED, and then once we will flip back to you and execute a grant contract with how to actually get disbursements from the grant, and you're off and running. And you will be assigned to a grant administrator on my team, and they are your liaisons throughout the entire 2-year process, soup to nuts, all the questions. We are there to support you and support the success of your project. You know, if you get through this process, we awarded your project because we believe in it and we want it to be successful, and we're here to help. And you will participate in the payment request process, monitoring, reporting, and closeout process. All grant funds are dispersed on a reimbursement basis. Just a quick note on that. What that means is, does that mean you have to pay for everything up front and then we pay you? No, that is not the case. You just have to incur those expenses. So if you have payroll and you accrue, 2 weeks of payroll expenses, you can send us your payroll report and then we will pay you, and then you can fulfill your obligations. Obviously, cash flow can be a concern here, but that's how we are required to do it on a reimbursement basis, and that's how we will do it. So we will work with you on a pace and scale that works well for you to make sure your project can be successful. So questions, please email your questions to us by not that date. That is an incorrect date. Go to the previous date. It was August 11th, I believe. And then we'll take your questions right now. So yeah, next up is going to be the demo. So we're going to pause for questions. So if you can drop your questions in the chat, or if you want to go on video, please raise your hand, and then I will call on you. So we got a lot of people here, so probably chat is going to be the best, and then I'll read the questions just so we can get through all of them. Elizabeth, and I'm just going to go in order of the questions that are asked, and then once we run out of questions, we'll transition to the demo, and we'll see how we do on time. But I want to leave at least a half hour for the demo. So Elizabeth asks, is this a grant or a professional technical contract? This is a grant. This is a grant. Kevin asks, how does D define rural? Outside Salmon County Metro, yes. We frankly haven't given a lot of thought about what we mean by rural. You tell us. But as long as there's a defensible or rational definition that you put forward in your proposal as a definition of a rural community, we will take that. USDA is probably a pretty good start. But definitely outside the seven county metro. But we do recognize that just because it's in greater Minnesota doesn't necessarily mean it's rural. I mean, Rochester, St. Cloud, these are high population density areas. We would not consider that rural. And yeah, so Michelle asks, we will need a fiscal agent. Do they also need to be the applicant in the grant system, or the organization, or can our organization be the applicant and identify the fiscal agent in the application? I think this might be related to if you are a public entity, like let's say you are a institution within the Minnesota State University system. I will maybe kick it to Anna, who can maybe better answer how that's going to work within the grants management system. Contractually, we totally understand that a university affiliated system, the actual fiscal agent will be the university system, and we will work within that. But in the end, the obligations will be on the institution, the program itself to deliver on grant objectives. But we understand the complexity of the university system. Anna, do you just want to quickly address?
I'll walk through that in the demo, so
okay,
I'll provide some context around that.
Great, we'll save that for later. In terms of NGOs, the fiscal agent will be a service providing organization. So bottom line there, that's not to say they can't partner, but we want the NGO to be the lead service provider in partnership or in a solo. Do payroll taxes count administrative costs as a tax need to be broken out separately in the budget? Off the top of my head, I cannot recall how we address that. I believe that is technically a part of Fringe, but don't hold me to that. We will address that in the FAQ. I don't want to misstate. That's an important technical question that I definitely cannot answer off the top of my head. Are social enterprise businesses eligible to apply for this grant? So I'm not totally familiar with, I believe a social enterprise business is technically a for-profit business with a social benefit, a special designation in state law. Short answer, no. It has to be a 501c3 nonprofit organization. So I think that answers that. That's not to say a social enterprise business couldn't potentially be a vendor or partner with some lead fiscal agent in some capacity. We're open to creative ideas on that, but the lead fiscal agent has to be a public entity or 501c3. Do letters of support from partnership organizations constitute as collusion? Tough question. You know, you obviously you cannot share the content of your proposal with other organizations that are also submitting. And so how would they be able to submit a letter of support if they're not familiar with the content of your proposal? So, proceed with caution there. Yeah, just read through the requirements under the affidavit of non-collusion and plan accordingly. Letter support, we're more interested in strong programs than a bunch of letters of support for poorly conceived programs. So really focus on the proposal itself, I guess, is what I would encourage you to support. Letters of support are great, are a good piece of evidence, but not super critical. It's more about the content of the proposal. Burke Murphy asks, USDA states any place with a population under 30,000 is rural. Great, we'll take it. If your definition of rural contradicts that, make the case, but that is a perfectly defensible definition that we're happy to accept. Connie asks, can grant funds be used to pay employee benefits such as health insurance and PTO? Yes, that's fringe. Specified relevant professional staff. Yes, that would qualify as fringe. Can a daycare apply for this grant? Probably not. I mean, you may have a 501c3 daycare, but what's the service that you're providing to entrepreneurs? Not sure how that would work. Probably not the right entity to apply. Daycare is providing valuable services, but they're not providing entrepreneurial support services to other businesses. We could totally imagine a childcare organization that provides support to other providers to grow or start their business. We've seen that before, but I can't imagine a daycare applying to receiving a grant for this. Can mental health clinics apply for this grant? Once again, not sure how that would fit in. With this isn't a health services or mental health services program. This is about supporting small businesses and entrepreneurs. So probably not a good fit. Hodman Shire asks, are there opportunities for renewal or additional funding after the initial grant period? If so, are agencies previously received funding eligible to apply again? Great question. Thanks for asking this. All previous applicants are, of course, invited to apply for additional funding. But that being said, like, it's a competitive funding opportunity. We have to look at it as an isolated funding opportunity. Obviously, if you participate in the past and have demonstrated strong performance, that will factor in on whether or not you get funded. But it's, this program went from $1.4 million a year to now roughly $7 million a year. And that may go up or down at the whims of the legislature. Who knows? We can only do what we're authorized to do. So we have to look at these in isolated funding rounds. But by all means, if you received a grant in the past, you're definitely invited to apply again, especially if you were successful in that. Next question is, can a grant cover a tuition fee contribution to a staff member? That's a tough one. Probably not. Though, if part of your project is training, training staff, like that's probably eligible. But this really isn't for, increasing your existing staff capacity. So I would say probably not. But if it's, a training course on like how to package loans or something, maybe we can talk about that, look at the RFP but yeah, this really isn't a tuition support program. I'd say it that way. Michael asks, would an organization be able to use the funds towards leasing equipment versus purchasing? Yeah, if it's needed to meet grant objectives and deliver services, that's totally fine. Laptops, IT support, that kind of stuff, that's perfectly fine. Within obvious reason and supporting the actual delivery of services. Does nonprofit mean exclusively 501c3? Yes, generally, unless it's like a community development corporation or some other form that's eligible. But I don't believe 501c6 would fall under that. That's typically chambers, which have advocacy roles, and so they wouldn't be eligible. Could you please respond to the question about nonprofits that do not yet have any income? Specifically, those that just started in 2020 and not have yet been running any programs. This is a tough one. We want to see existing capacity and a record of success, which is tough for a totally new nonprofit that doesn't have any programming in place. That's not to say don't give this a look and work through it and see if it's a good fit. But we definitely want to see some investment either at the local or private level and some endorsement of the services that you hopefully will start delivering soon or will plan on. But I would say it's a pretty low probability that if your organization is totally new and doesn't have any record of success, that you'd be funded, unless it was like I could imagine like a spin-off of an existing organization that there's like really robust staff capacity with like a long record of experience, and like you can demonstrate that and have a really, really strong proposal. But it's just, I would describe it as you have a much higher hill to climb to demonstrate that capacity piece. So it's got to be a really, really good plan and really strong qualifications. So give it a look, but know that it will be a challenge because the proposals that we get in are very, very competitive with organizations that have a long record of success, years, decades even. So take that into account. Can BTAP or Elevate Elevate funding? So this is City of Minneapolis or Hennepin County count as match? Potentially, as long as those funds aren't already targeted towards matching other funds. So if those are new funds that are local funds that are not already targeting as matched towards other funds, then potentially yes. We like it. It's local funds, local to state. It's great. More services, more people being served. Absolutely. But I want to note that Hennepin County and Minneapolis may have their own requirements on that and what their funds can be matched towards. So just take that into consideration. And is it one-on-one technical support or can it be in groups? Both. We're asked all kinds. We fully expect cohort-based modeling, service models, one-on-one technical assistance, networking, all sorts of variety of services. Can be eligible for this. Jeff Wig asks, can in-kind count as match? By match, we mean cash match, money on the table. By all means, we're happy to count in-kind, but it doesn't count towards the matching, not requirements, but what we're looking for in match. Connie asks, could funds include construction costs or renovating space to run programming? No. This is for direct services, not for capital. Could funds be used for lease and other operation expenses in a suitable space? Absolutely. That would fall under the administrative budget, those indirect administrative expenses. Can there be collaboration between nonprofit and for-profit organizations? Yes. Yep. I don't think that's a problem as long as the nonprofit organization is the lead applicant and they, providing services. Can we use federal funds as matching component? Yes, absolutely. We love leveraging federal funds. The key thing there, though, is that oftentimes federal funds have their own matching requirements. And so if you want to use these state funds as a match to meet your federal matching requirements, that's fine. And federal can count towards match towards us. But if you're already getting federal funds and you have already matched those with other funding sources, you can't then also count those federal funds as match towards us. That would be double counting your match. So take that into consideration. Talk more about the matching component of the grant. What matching types are acceptable? What about in-kind? We already talked about in-kind. How many points are lost if there is no match? What matching types are accessible? Private. We love to see private investors in terms of like whether it's foundations, businesses, sometimes banks will do this as well, and local funds and federal funds. Other state funding from other sources are not considered as match. How many points are lost if there is no match? Well, it's not like a straight formula, but there's no way you're going to get the 10 points under matching if there is no match. But so as much as 9 if you have a great project and it's well scaled to your capacity and demonstrates that value. So, depends on the strength of your proposal and the strength of your project. Sorry if that's a little vague. Jennifer asks, and we're coming up on time, so any questions that we don't address, we will document, we'll download those, and we'll address them in the FAQ. Do matching funds have to be under contract with the same terms as the deed? No, and not necessarily. Though obviously those matching funds need to be within the relevant performance period. As a 501c3, could we apply for funds to purchase an existing building? No, I'll just stop there. No, not purchasing stuff with this, or purchasing buildings at least. Will this webinar be offered again? We will make a recorded version available. Can you share the new portal website again? Anna will take over here in a couple minutes and go through in great detail on that. How does DEED view partnerships with out-of-state entities such as state vendors, contractors, employees, specifically in border communities? Interesting question. So obviously this is for businesses with primary operations in Minnesota or residents of Minnesota. If you have, if you're working in border communities and the owner lives in Fargo, but their business is in across the border, that's fine. It's really about the business. It's really about driving economic growth in Minnesota. It's fine if somebody lives elsewhere, but it's really got to be focused on Minnesota businesses. And so in terms of vendors, as long as those vendors are supporting the Minnesota businesses and they're bringing, something to the table that can't be easily found elsewhere, that's fine. We understand that, that especially in border communities, that they don't think strictly along state lines. However, unfortunately, as a state agency, we do. So we have to work within that. So plan accordingly. Boy, did we get to the end of the questions?
It looks like there's one more at the very end.
One more, and then I will hand it over to you, Anna. I just lost questions.
The last question is, I joined late. Shall a for-profit organization apply for it alone or in partnership? Looks like we may have lost Brandon.
Oh, sorry, I'm back.
Here you are. Okay. The last question is, shall a for-profit organization apply for it alone or in partnership?
For-profit organization is not eligible to apply. If you have great services and you're looking to support entrepreneurs in some capacity, you could potentially partner with a nonprofit organization to do that. But once again, we're not looking for a nonprofit to just be a carve out for a for-profit entity to receive these funds. Like, you have to make the case that this for-profit agent or this nonprofit agency is the lead service provider. And maybe there's some other services that they're going to contract out with. That's fine. That's totally fine. But it's the nonprofit agency that's going to be taking the lead and pulling the program together and delivering the program. So, and with that, we got to all the questions. That's awesome. We have some time to go through the demo. So I am going to hand it over to my colleague Anna, who's going to walk through a demo of the grants management system. And I'll just flip the slide and then take it away, Anna.
Great. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. We are recording this session, so if you join late, this recording will be available on our grants and contract opportunities page of where the RFP is listed. I am putting the link to the grants management system in the chat. So all applications that will be process for this grant opportunity will have to go through the grants management system. We are piloting some initial grant programs at DEED. The grants management system is entirely new in terms of being live and open to the public as of 2 weeks ago. So there's only a handful of grant programs in there now, and we'll be rolling it out to other grant programs at DEED in the near future. So please check the RFP details for other grants that you might be applying to understand if it's going to be something that you apply to in the grants management system versus the manual process that we have been using at DEED up until this point. So the link I put it into chat, and then I'll be sharing my screen to walk through where to find the grants management system portal and the steps to get registered. So please take note in terms of the registration process because it's very specific, and I'll walk you through that. So on our grant and contract opportunities page on our DEED website, which you can find under the About Us section and under grants and contract opportunities, you'll find this page. I'm going to show you a couple different things on here. The competitive grants and contracts link here is going to have all the postings of competitive contracts and competitive grants that are currently open and ready for proposals. So you can find the Small Business Assistance Partnerships grant here, a little bit more information about the grant itself, a little bit of overview, the actual request for proposals RFP document, the PDF version and the Word version, information about the deadline. We're accepting applications through August 31st through 4 p.m. and that this will need to be received through the grants management system. Once we get done and post this recording, it should show up under this informational webinar section here. So you'll be able to see that posted. It usually takes a day or two for us to get the recording up online. So please feel free to look at that if you want to refresh your memory about what was covered today. And then in terms of technical assistance, if you need technical assistance interpreting the instructions or preparing the application itself, please reach out to the grant program staff under the mnsbp.deed@state.mn.us email address. For any technical assistance for the grants management system itself, you'll be reaching out to me directly on the GMS, which stands for Grants Management System, .deed@state.mn.us. We are very responsive to that email, and I get notifications once I've received messages in there. So if you're experiencing any technical issues with the system itself, please reach out to us using that email address. But as I said, make sure you check the grant RFP itself to see what is being accepted in the portal versus what is accepting the manual applications. I'm going to go back to that page I was just on. And if there's grants link here, you'll find a link to the grants management system. So you can click on this link here and it will take you to mndgrants.mn.gov, which is our landing page for our grants management system portal. There's important steps listed here. Please look over these as you're registering the system. We request that any new registration for any organization entering into the system be registered by the organization representative. And we're defining that as someone who has contract signing authority for grant contracts with the state of Minnesota. So any grant application that you submit, you're going to have that person who is the contract signing authority submit on behalf of your organization. Once they are registered and approved in the system, they will receive a notification in their email inbox saying notification for access approval from the system administrator, which is myself. And that will include instructions of how to add additional users to the organization in the system. So if they have grant writers or other members of the organization that are working on the application, they will be able to add those people to the system. This whole setup in terms of having the organization representative register first is very important, and it's part of our security process with the system itself. So we will not accept users that do not meet that organization representative designation as the first people to register on behalf of the organization. Once we get those people approved, then they can add additional members. We suggest that you bookmark this website in your web browser so you can easily access it in the future. So once you've submitted your application, if you're approved and awarded a grant, all the rest of your grants is going to be managed in the system itself. So that includes payment request processing, outcomes reporting, and reporting that's due based on the grant that you've received, any closeout processes, amendment requests, everything is going to be in the grants management system. So it's important for you to maintain your login information and also be able to easily access this page. If you are interested in learning more about which grants are currently in the system, once you get to this page, you can click on the opportunity search, and this allows you to look at the grants without logging into the system itself without having to create a login. So if you click on opportunity search in the left corner here, you can either do an open search to look at the opportunities by just clicking the search button without creating any limitations in the search criteria. Or if you want to look by eligibility per grant, you can click on the eligible organizations here. So if you're a nonprofit organization, 501c3, you can select that and then click search and then see the opportunities that are available to you as a 501c3. Of course, make sure you read the RFP itself to understand eligibility criteria, but we are creating a little bit of filtering by eligibility this way as well in the system. And then as I mentioned too, if you just hit search, you'll be able to search for everything without limiting the criteria. So I'm going to go back to that landing page, the mndgrants.mn.gov. And I'm going to log into our testing site so I can show you more of the system itself. So I'm already a registered user and I'm the organization representative, and I'm logging in to the system to check on what opportunities might be available to me. So once you log in for the first time, there's going to be some requirements in setting up additional profile information for your organization. You can access that information by clicking on your username on the upper right, select profile, and then you will see your personal information attached to your username that shows up right away. But then as you look under the organization information section on the left side of your screen, you'll see the general organization information that you entered in with the initial registration. You can also enter in your UEI information here, your federal ID number, and then any other, you can attach documents if you want to, not necessary, but if these sections aren't filled out properly, you will get a pop-up notification about requirements in the system. So the system will notify you if things aren't filled out properly. The one thing I really do want to point out here is the additional organization information. This part you do have to fill out before you start an application. And this is showing the remit address that you are set up as for your organization. So we ask for your DBA if you have a DBA, doing business as, separate from the legal name of your organization, the address associated with that remit to address, your state tax ID, and then also if you have your Swift vendor ID information, please enter that in here along with your Swift vendor location ID code. And then you can select your organization types to, like, what type of organization you are for eligibility criteria. So in the future, this information will save and attach to your organization's profile and be ready for you. So I'm going to go back to the home screen here to look at the different opportunities that I see. So you'll see a few different panes that pop up, little tiles on your dashboard. One's announcements. We haven't been using that function yet, but if there's any important announcements that you need to know about the system itself or potential grants that's in the system that's available to you, we will post those announcements here. Your tasks here are the tasks that you've been working on in the system. So if you're working on an application and you're saving it and continue to work on it after you've left and logged out and logging back in again, you will find those applications that you've already started under My Tasks. If you're wanting to start a new application, you'll find new application opportunities under the My Opportunities section. So I'm going to click on the Small Business Assistance Partnerships. There is some agreement language here, just providing the description of the grant program, and then the types of eligibility that are required for this program. So if you feel like this applies to you and that you are eligible to apply, then you can select agree, and then it will take you into the application itself. So the application forms are laid out on the left here panel here. You'll see an open box showing that if something is unsaved or uncompleted, it'll give you an exclamation mark if you have started it and you have things that aren't complete on that form that you'll need to complete prior to submitting the entire application. And then you'll also see a check mark if you've completed that section and it's fully done. You can have multiple people in your organization who are registered in the system under different user roles. For the organization representative, the grant writer, or an organization member, work on these applications at the same time. So you don't have to work on it separately. You can have other members of your organization that are in the system go through and work on their sections if they have specific sections that they're working on. The only person that can submit the application on behalf of the organization is that organization representative, though. So they will need to log into the system, and I'll show you exactly where they'll be submitting their information. So the application ID is more of just like a naming ID that we use to track applications more for internal use. You don't really have to worry about that too much. It will say the funding opportunity. And then there's links to RFP documents at the top here. So this includes the actual RFP for that is the same as on the deed website, the conflict of interest disclosure, employment insurance account consent form, and then the affidavit for non-collusion for this specific program. Some of these forms are fillable and some of them are not. So be aware if it's a non-fillable form, that means there might be a wet signature that you need to provide, and we'll have to print out the document and have that signature and then upload it for submittal. So each of these are a hyperlink. If you click on them, it'll take you to the document where you can then download the document itself. So the fillable forms are noted in the actual name of the form. So if it's a fillable form, you can utilize it in Adobe if you have that access, or you can print it off and then also scan it and reattach. The attachments for these forms go at the bottom of this form, and I'll show you those in a moment. So we're asking for a proposal name, proposal summary, We'll ask for the primary contacts for this proposal, so that person's job title, their name, and then contact information. The highlighted red fields are the required fields. You'll also get this attention box here at the top that will show you all the required fields that are required to be able to submit this form properly. If you are unsure of what it's referencing, you can actually click on the field itself and it will take you to that area of the form. If you want to collapse this box because it will populate right away when you enter into the form, you can use this little caret icon on the left side of that box to collapse as you're working on this. I do want to note some of the structure in the system to provide extra rows for areas. So if you see this plus symbol over here and you need to add another contact, you can click on that symbol. It will add another row. If you decide that you don't want that additional row, you can click on the minus symbol. You'll get a little pop-up box just asking you to confirm that you're sure that you want to delete this row, and then you can hit confirm to delete. A lot of this information that's on the application information form in the system is typically collected in our cover sheets. So you might be familiar with a lot of these questions that you see in here, such as anticipated project start date and end date, geographic area served by the project, the targeted population and communities, target industry served, the number of participants you're anticipating to be served by the project, anticipated number of hours of service, estimated cost, total cost per hour, estimated hours per client, estimated number of employees and contracts providing services under the proposed program, and then types of services provided. So the next section is the grant performance measures. These are the measures that we are asking you to collect and identify as part of what you would like to focus on for your grant performance measures. These will be the ones that you're reporting on for your outcomes reporting. So please refer to the RFP document to understand better what grant performance measures might be required for the program that you're applying for. There's a little icon of a question mark throughout the system. So if you want to understand better what's supposed to be filled out in these areas, you'll see a little bit more information that's asking you to refer to the RFP documentation. Similarly to the rows up above for the primary contacts, the grant performance measures also have the ability to add additional rows as needed to accommodate multiple grant performance measures. And then we get to the project partners section. So this is where we want you to identify your project partners. Please refer to the RFP if there's any requirements for what types of project partners you might have for your grant proposal. We ask that you provide the organization's legal name, the type of organization that they are, their contact information and address, whether or not you intend to have them be compensated as part of the grant, whether or not you're attaching a letter of support, if there's a conflict of interest disclosure letter required for this partner, and a description box to describe that project partnership. So if you have multiple project partners that you need to add to the section, please use the add new section plus button at the top, and then you'll get an additional project partner area that will pop up for you to add that second partner and so on. So keep using that plus button as you add your project partners. All those attachments, the documents that I showed up at top that are attachments that are required for part of your submittal for the application, please put those attachments in the section down here. So once you're ready to move on to the narrative section for the grant, you can click next form. And it will automatically start saving for you. There is a save button that you can save in the upper right side. You can also print any of these forms and pages that you're seeing too. It will allow you to have a PDF version. And then you can also add notes if you want to. We have that functionality. We're not sure exactly what people use it for, but it is an option for you. Perhaps it's something that you want to add a note on this form for all the people that are working on the form with you within your organization is one way that you could use it. So in the grant application narrative section, you will find those the areas that you'll be scored on for your proposal itself. And then also identifying how many points are associated with each section. So there are multiple sections in here. Each question that's provided, there's a text box below those questions for you to provide your answers. And please note there are character limits on each of the sections. So if you are working outside of the system as you're working through your grant proposal narrative, just do those character count limits in your Word document or Google Docs, whatever you're using to develop your narrative. So similarly, you'll find text boxes at the end of each section to provide answers to that area that we're asking questions for. There are some sections that are covered in other areas. So the partnerships, collaboration, and community support, that's going to be under the project partners section in the application information, but here's a little bit more guidance that's from the RFP to help guide you for filling out that section that you can reference. Then we have the performance evaluation and reporting section, 10 points, the questions supporting that, and then your area that you can put your narrative in. And then a little bit more information about the budget and matching and how many points it's scored on. And the application budget section is the next form that we'll go to. And so this is just providing a little bit more guidance about what's allowable and what we're asking you to provide in your budget justification. So here is where you'll see the authorized signatures and assurance statements and certification statements. This is the part that needs to be filled out by that organization representative. As I mentioned before, this is a person that has contract assigning authority with the state of Minnesota for grant contracts. So whether that be the director, president, CEO, your financial CFO for your organization, those are the kind of levels of people that we're seeing for the organization representative. So I'm going to go on to the next form, which is the application budget. And you'll see that there's pop-up needs attention of all the sections I didn't complete. Also, on this left panel, it will show you that this section contains errors, which means it's just missing information. So get the little exclamation point highlighting each form. So here you find the different budget categories broken down for your requested budget. The system will total your total requested budget at the bottom of these budget categories. And it's also going to give you a cost per participant calculation. And that's provided on the total budget requested amount and divided by the anticipated number of participants served by the project that you entered in the application information form. So it will just calculate that number for you. We do take that into consideration when looking at proposals as well. Here's where you're going to provide information on your applicant match, your match amount, match type, and then match source. If it doesn't fall into any of these categories, you can choose other and then provide comments on that other type of match source. Otherwise, if you have multiple matches that you want to provide, you can use that add new row feature to add additional rows as needed. And then it will total your applicant match that you're having. So we're asking for 50%. Please be aware of that as you're looking at the total budget requested. You can see the calculation of your match to make sure that you're meeting that match requirement. And then we have the budget justification section or the budget narrative where you provide more detail about your budget request. And then any attachments that you may want to provide. Not necessary, I don't think in this case, but it is there as an option for you. We mentioned the risk assessment forms, the financial review. That's the next section of the application process. So this is exactly following the same form that we used as a PDF form in the past. So there's many different required questions that will need to be filled out before you submit your application, and each of these sections will need to be completed. At the very end of the process, if you've filled out everything correctly and you have check boxes all the way down, there is the comments and certifications as the last part of the application process. You can provide any additional comments or certifications that you want to state here. So feel free to provide any additional comments if you want, any additional attachments that might be required that you weren't able to submit in the first application information form. You can add additional attachments here. And then there's that certification statement just that will need to be filled out by the organization representative prior to submitting the application. So they will check this box here. It will populate their name. It'll provide a date and time stamp and their job title. And then they can hit save and submit. If you try to save and submit and there's still information missing, you'll get a notification pop up just warning you that there's additional things that are missing. So I am going to stop sharing and just check the chat. See if there's any questions that come through. It looks like someone has their hand up, so please feel free to unmute yourself or put your question in the chat if you have a question. So just this grants management system is entirely new to DEED. If you don't have any questions right now, let's see. There are a few. Let me scroll up here.
And if you want, I can read them out and then
Okay.
you can address them.
So Kevin says, if we've used and registered in a portal for another state agency, such as agriculture, is this the same system? It's not the same system. I know there's plans to eventually hopefully get one system under the state, but right now each agency and even different offices within the same agency, such as health, have different systems set up. So this one's specific to DEED. We are using it as a cross-agency system ongoing in the future. So we will be onboarding additional grant programs as we go through this piloting phase to test out some initial programs, including this program. But just look to see on the RFP how you need to submit your proposal, and please follow those directions. So this one is specific to DEED, and all the links to the site are available in the RFP document. Another question is, are you saying that the contract signer needs to sign in and be approved prior to submitting the grant proposal? Absolutely. The contract signer needs to sign off on a bunch of stuff before they submit the proposal. They need to be the first person that registers in the system too. As I said, this is the security measure. We are having organizations self-vet additional users that need to be added to their organization so that we're not adding users to organizations. They will receive that information on how to add additional users to the system in that approval email that they receive once they have been approved. Is there any requirement for a notary on any of these documents? Yes, there is one. The one form that requires a notary signature is the one that is not a non-fillable form. It's on the application information page, and it would be the affidavit for non-collusion that needs a notary. And that's across all of our grant programs at the state. The question from Jennifer, did I misunderstand or did you say the organization's authorized representative must submit the application or just certain forms? They have two different areas of signature that they have to sign off on. One is at the grant application narrative at the very end of the form. They will be the only ones that can sign off and submit that part of the application. And then at the very end, under the comments and certifications, after all the risk assessment forms for financial risk, they have an area that they need to submit, and then they will be able to do the final save and submit on behalf of your organization. Let's see. Can you apply if your nonprofit status is pending and you want to partner with an already well-established nonprofit with a 501c3 status, if that was the case, who would be the best party to submit the application? I will turn that over to Brandon.
Yeah. So, yeah, if you don't have a nonprofit status pending, probably not in a good position to directly apply for this grant, considering how heavily we weight organizational capacity and experience. You're fully welcome to, find a partner to partner with on your project, an existing 501c3. But that lead partner is the primary service provider, and the lead applicant, not just a fiscal agent for your organization that you're working on. So,
which reminds me that we had that fiscal agent question. So please put the fiscal agent, you as the 501c3, you should be the one applying for the actual grant and submitting the proposal. But if you have a fiscal agent, please put that information in the project partners area in the application information form as part of your application. And then note that they are the fiscal agent. There's a comment section that you can add that information there. And please reach out. This is a new process for all of our grantees. And we want to make sure, or potential applicants for our grant programs, we want to make sure that this is a smooth process for you to use the system. I did put the link to the system again in the chat. If you have any questions, I also provided the email address that you'll be contacting. That email address is also on the landing page of the website for the portal. It's gms.deed@statemn.us. We'll respond in a timely fashion, and please give us as much information as you can about any issues that you might be experiencing so we can help address those as quickly as possible. But we're here for support. We don't want you to struggle with the system at all. So just please reach out with any questions that you might have, and we'll respond back to you as soon as we can. We're excited about the system in general, and hopefully that it becomes an easier process for you as you might apply for many grants across DEED to help tie things and manage your grants better as well with us. But we thank you for being a part of this pilot and trying this out, and we'll be tweaking the system as we go along and hoping to make it the best user experience as we can.
Yeah, thanks, Anna. Thanks for that. Once again, we're super excited about the new grants management system. Feels like we're finally catching up to where a lot of our partners are at, frankly. And we hope it saves you some time. And it's also a very collaborative platform. I'm really excited about the capabilities of like multiple people on your teams being able to be in there, collaborate, especially in this new hybrid environment. So I think it's going to be a great benefit. No doubt there'll be some hiccups. There'll be some things that don't quite work right, or some points of confusion, but that's why we're here. We're here to support you, get you through that. So yeah, questions for the RFP, please submit it to that email address, questions about the system, send that to the GMS email address. Thanks a lot, everybody. We will post this recording within the day or two where the RFP is currently posted on DEED's website. We will also post a copy of this slide deck. And please send us your questions, and we will get the FAQ published within a week or two. And just keep those questions coming in. Try to get all your questions to us by August 11th, so people have an opportunity to get the responses, and if they need that for their proposals, can get that information. So thanks a lot, everybody. This is a lot of content, we know, but thanks a lot for hanging with us, and thanks for your interest in this funding opportunity. This is a hugely impactful, hugely important priority for this agency, and we really look forward to all the hard work you're going to put in putting great proposals together, and all the hard work we're going to do reading those proposals and making sure that we fund some great projects. So thanks a lot, everybody. Take care.